Hello, welcome to Supermotoland in the Supermotoland workshop. Today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about rear suspension on the Supermoto bikes. This is a 2023 Husqvarna FS 450. Now what I'm about to tell you, you can probably apply to most Supermoto bikes, but I find one of the most important things suspension wise is to set the static sag on your rear suspension correctly. You'll probably find when you first get the bike and you lift the bike, there's a lot of movement there in the top of the suspension, and you want to get rid of all of that, because if it's like saggy here and soft, basically you've got all sorts of things going on with the bike. But a lot of the time the rear will sit down and the front will be up in the air and it'll be floating and you'll get chatter on the front. So a lot of front end problems stem from the rear. So to set the sag, if you just come around here, have a look at this, you need to, quite simple, just need to take a measurement anywhere really on the bike, as long as it's the same point, but I take it to there. So that's 560 millimeters, 560, and then basically drop the bike onto the floor. And take that measurement again, and that's 552. So that's about, what did I say, 560? About 8 millimeters, is it? Anyway, I've completely forgotten the measurement idea, but the measurement you're looking for is somewhere between, you can be anywhere between 5 millimeters and 20 millimeters, but generally between 10 and 20 is where you want to be. We normally aim for about 15 millimeters static sag. So don't worry about rider sag, which is the rider being on the bike. The important thing for me personally as a team mechanic is to get that static sag right. Once that's correct, then things are sort of sprung correctly in effect. However, if you are like a heavier rider, or you ride the bike sat at the back, you're sort of knee down and you sit back a bit, you might need to put in a harder spring. The spring that comes on the shock is a 51 Newton meter. We've gone up to a 54, and that's with our rider. That is, he's about 65 kilos. Other riders, we go up to like 56, 58 Newton meters. So it depends on riding style and your weight. But generally, I'd say if you're 70 to 80 kilos, you probably want a 56. 80 plus, you want a 58, something like that. And you can wind on preload here. If you turn the spring round that way, you can compress the spring. You can see that in there. I'll get my finger from the bottom. So this thing here, just keep turning that. Wind some preload on. You can, if you're on a standard spring, you want to stiffen things up, you can obviously take the static sag down to like 5 millimeters or something like that to try and stiffen it up on the preload. Another couple of things here, you've got the low speed, which is the white one, that's the low speed compression damping. And this big one on the outside is high speed compression damping. Now, these are two pretty useful tools. High speed compression damping is the one I use the most, and that's almost acts like preload, so it kind of stiffens up that first touch of throttle. It's when the suspension moves very quickly in the first instance. And low speed I don't use so much. That's more sort of controlling the bike as you accelerate out of a corner. If the whole thing starts squatting down, you wind more of this on. These are very individual things. It's one of those things, it's difficult to explain what you should do with it, because it's when you're at a track and a rider comes in and gives you some feedback and you start changing things. But basically the high speed compression, wind it on to stiffen things up, wind it off to soften it. And that's pretty much what you're doing. The rebound is at the bottom here. Again, rebound we tend to sort of leave alone most of the time. We're probably about 10 clicks out. We tend to wind that on if the rear's hopping up too quick and the rear's breaking traction. It depends what you want out of the bike. If you're going through a dirt section, you might want that softer so the whole bike can float a little bit more and follow the bumps. Same as the compression damping in the dirt, you might want to back it off so that the bike's a bit softer. But one tip I do is I put a little zip tie, I don't know if you can see that there, a little zip tie around the suspension on the rear there. That's a good indicator. Obviously, if you're going to do jumps, you'll pretty much bottom it out. But if you get the rider to do just asphalt, I always find that if this is about 2/3 down, ending up about there somewhere, you're in the right sort of zone, so you know that you've got the correct spring and correct sort of preload. If it's a lot further up, you know that the rear is too hard, so slacken it off for maybe the high speed compression, or you need a softer spring, and that will, you know, sort of just help you gauge what's going on with the rear. And that's it basically. Obviously these tips are for the Husqvarna FS 450. Most supermoto bikes will follow the same sort of rules and principles, but the main thing is get that static sag setting correct, and that will solve a lot of your problems from the word go. Hope you enjoyed our little interesting blog, and be back next time with a few more tips.